First of all, I'd like to thank the people who are here helping me. They are also dedicating their time. Bomborge, Haskell, Kudo, and Suitcase. Couldn't do it without them. So Ara-Kara was in season 1. It's kind of has received not a ton of changes since then, but I think it's still good to go over some of the minor changes as well as some things that we've learned in season 1 that still apply here in season 3. It's also a little bit tricky with routing, as there's kind of a pretty wide open group before the first boss, and then the second boss has 2 separate routes, both which have the pros and cons, and then before boss 3 you also have the sides or the front that you can go down. As a dungeon, it's very heavy on poison dispels. So if you have classes that can handle poison dispels, it's a good thing to look out for when forming your pug groups. We actually have 4 poison dispels in this group. Myself, the monk, the druid can all dispel anyone, and hunters actually have a talent which is taken during some affixes, but it's also something you take for this dungeon called Emergency Salve, which I just hovered and showed you, which allows Feign Death and Aspect of the Turtle to remove poison effects from themselves. With that, we should be good with dispelling the poison between the 4 of us. Another thing is that I'm going to be showing this from a healing perspective. I'm playing as Preservoker, which I realize is a little bit underrepresented class outside of the Race to World First, where it's overrepresented, but I'm going to again try to explain things in the terms of rotational payoff, minor cooldown, and major cooldown for what I'm using to heal through things. One of the things about healing in Mythic Plus that's a little bit different from Raid is maximizing your damage is something that's super optimal to do because you're a higher percentage of the group's damage than you are in a Raid. There are 14 DPS in a raid and 4 healers. There are 3 DPS here and 1 healer. So maximizing your DPS is incredibly important after, obviously, you make sure you keep everyone alive. So one of the nice things about Preservoker is it's actually a very high DPS healer. So I'm going to try to be over 1 million DPS overall for the dungeon. Keep the group alive, first and foremost. And then secondly, I want to make sure to do as much damage as possible. So pulling up MDT here. Like every dungeon, you want to do a Lust Pull at the start if possible. And I actually think Ara-Kara's Lust Pull is one of the trickier ones, and one that I would recommend practicing on lower difficulties before doing it on higher difficulties, as gathering all the mobs can be quite difficult for the tank, as well as just random AoE damages going out, which can cause aggro for the healer. Thankfully, we're going to have all of our cooldowns, so we're going to press a lot of them in order to get to the first mini-boss. So our tank is just going to run down and while mounted, and we're going to follow him. He's going to then demount here at the bottom of the stairs, start gathering the mobs, and we're going to use speed boost like Roar. I'm going to rescue him forward, and we're going to go towards the mini-boss. The first mini-boss has several abilities that need to be interrupted, but the one that's most important is the Horrifying Shrill. This is what's called a priority interrupt. We have reasonably good interrupts in our group. We have 2 ranged interrupts. We have my own interrupt, which is 40 seconds, and we have 2 melee interrupts between our tank and our monk. So generally speaking, someone is going to just have the priority interrupt, possibly our tank, as he can get an interrupt that he's going as he's gathering the mobs, and then have his interrupt off cooldown for the priority interrupt. So generally speaking, it's good to let the tank handle that. But if you have a longer cooldown interrupt like myself, I'm not going to be interrupting anything. I'm going to be back up on the Horrifying Shrill that Ixen, the first mini-boss, cast. That's the most problematic thing that can wipe us. In addition to that, there's a bunch of web bolts that are going to be cast by Trilling Attendants, as well as a Resonant Barrage. The web bolts need to be interrupted by a kick spell, and the Resonant Barrages can actually be crowd controlled after they've been casting. Other than that, there's just going to be a bunch of random damage that needs to be healed through. There's some bleeds from jabbing flyers. The Engorged Crawlers have a Venomous Spit, which requires the Poison Dispel. So our Hunter's going to be dispelling themselves, and then our Monk and Druid, whenever they have 3 GCDs, will also be helping me with the dispels. And then I'm going to be trying to dispel on cooldown as well. Like I said, I do think this is a tricky Lust Pull, especially if you're not familiar with the dungeon. If you are not familiar with the dungeon, I would recommend going to the bottom of the stairway and pulling it there, and then lusting the first boss instead. Especially on lower keys, you don't need to do these crazy pulls in order to time it. I would just like to demonstrate how to do these pulls as we're doing them. But again, just do what you're comfortable with and try to learn. But we're going to go ahead and start and do the first pull. It's going to be a lot of interrupts to get things in, as we don't have any Death Knights, and making sure that we interrupt the priority cast, and then big healing checks. I have all of my cooldowns. They're there to be pressed. We're going to press them. So one of the things you'll see on MDT here on my screen, you can see all of these silk wraps, which are usable by any tailor who has 25 points in it. They offer a 10-second stun on a single target. They're sometimes tricky to pick up. And like Suitcase mentioned, you can pick it up before and then put in the key. However, I wouldn't worry too much about that, especially at lower levels. They're more trouble than they're worth. But going to go ahead and do a pull timer. And on you, Suit. We're going to do this first poll to Ixen, and then after that, we'll explain the next part.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes, thank you for that, Nexi. So you see Suitcase is mounted here. He's running down, just grabbing the crawlers. Now is when he's going to demount, become a bear. This is where I'm going to start spending cooldowns. I'm going to Zephyrus for movement speed. Dispel or Priest, Dispel myself. And then rescue him forward a little bit and come forward myself. Now I'm going to Lust as everything's gathered. And we're going to kicks in. Dodging the frontal here. Dodge the circles. That's the prio interrupt that just had to happen. I saw Kudo get it, so I'm going to go ahead and spin my interrupt on something else to reduce the damage going out. And as you see, this is quite a lot of damage going out. This is why we have cooldowns, to press them. You can see pretty much everything is on cooldown there for me. But we were able to make it through it. Everyone's alive. So the poison, as you can see, it does quite a bit of damage. So that's kind of why Poison Dispel is so good here. This next section, I would recommend, this is where the boss is going to be. I would recommend clearing this whole room, as it's just like giving yourself more space with the boss is what's important. You don't generally want to do a pull this small, even without cooldowns. However, we just accidentally pulled. We're just going to get more of the mobs that we had previously. These crawlers, which do the poison. You'll notice that you played in Season 1, they no longer explode like they did in Season 1, which is a welcome change. Controlling attendance, again, they have web bolts need to be interrupted, and then a barrage needs to be interrupted. The flyers just do random damage and small bleeds. One of the big changes that happened this season is that this mini boss coming up here, Nact, is much easier. So previously he had a significant physical damage AoE that he did whenever he did Call of the Brood. It still does party damage, but it does significantly less per level. And in addition to that, it summons a bunch of ads that have to be picked up. So we're going to want to stack for that. And it's still good to use group defensives such as Zephyr for that time. But it is physical damage, so AMZ does not work on that. So generally, you don't want to pull everything into him, as there's still bleeds. There's still going to be poisons and bleeds that are going out, and he does still do AoE damage. So the general rule of thumb after that first pull is to maybe do this little island in like 2 pulls or 1. So we already did one of them. So gather them all up in 1 pull, but really just do whatever you're comfortable with. It's fine to just do it in 2 pulls as well. So we're going to do that and then do the boss, and he's just going to have an interrupt and a frontal, and then the AoE that we have to heal through that spawns ads. So on you, Suit. And so here, while we're gathering, it's a good time for me to put out as much damage as possible. Well, there's not damage going out, basically. I haven't talked about the affix. The affix that Xalathas just put out is a bunch of orbs that hover around each person, and someone else just has to grab your orb, and that's kind of it. That's the whole thing. A very easy affix. Can be a little bit annoying on some bosses, and we're going to see that on the last boss here. In this dungeon, it's going to be a little bit annoying, but basically it's going to be our tank is going to get the melee, and then the melee is going to get the tank, and then the range are going to have to get our own. And again, you can take a larger pulls if you need to, but right now, especially whenever you're first learning the dungeons, just take whatever you're comfortable with. And then you can take some crawlers and flyers into the mini boss. It's a pretty reasonable thing to deal with. So yes, this web bolt going out, that's getting interrupted. I'm a Zephyr for the AoE that's happening. Then I'm heal up everyone. That's pretty much it. You do still need to have, not like necessarily a big cooldown, but a minor cooldown or maybe a rotational payoff. whenever that happens, as it does still do some significant damage to the group. So I'll go ahead and commit a minor cooldown there. And everyone's topped off. Unfortunately, the crawlers don't despawn and they don't give percent. It is still a much easier mini boss than last time. So before we go to this boss is kind of similar to the previous mini bosses. He has a frontal, he has web bullets to get cast. The only difference is that he has a toxic cloud that goes on the ground, and his bolt is actually a poison bolt. There's also a annoying caster here that's going to need to be interrupted in, as we don't want to just like fight that and pull it up to the into the mini boss. But that can be handled by ranged interrupts, so that's a good thing for me to do, or for our mage or hunter to kind of handle that interrupt as we're pulling into this mini boss. Go ahead and pull Suit, and then we'll explain the first boss. So letting your tank get the first interrupt is a smart thing to do. So I'm going to here and get the second interrupt. The frontal needs to be dodged. Again, trying to be active with dispelling of poisons, dodging the green circles on the ground, all standard things that you do in any kind of content. And so if you have to let a cast go off, the one that's targeting the tank is usually the best one. We had a few too many go off there. I actually don't know what killed you, Haskell. So we could battle res here, but we don't need it to beat this mini boss. That's a good time. So it's not really a necessary time to battle res. We'd rather save it. So once we kill all 3 mini bosses, the boss spawns. So this boss is a boss that scales very hard, and that is it's the kind of boss that's quite easy early on, and it's the kind of boss that, because the way of his damage works, it scales extremely hard. So there's multiple ways to deal with this boss. And I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to do. That's something that I would is kind of like the best practice, and then you can do it the other way at the end whenever it comes clear. So you'll notice if I click on the boss, there's a red circle around him. That red circle is very important. So the boss will eat these eggs whenever he does his spell alerting shield. It's going to make them into spiders. Those spiders need to be killed. Those spiders are then going to walk towards the boss, but they're not actually walking towards the boss. They're walking towards one of us. They're going to fixate on one member of our group. And as long as that member of the group is not within the red circle of Avanoxx, Avanoxx will not eat the ads, which means that we can just stand here and tank him close to the eggs, burst down the ads. We don't have to worry about movement in that phase, which greatly increases our uptime on Avanoxx. He also does a tank buster, which is going to do significant damage to the tank. That's something the tank should be popping a defensive for every single time. In addition to that, he does the thing that awakens these eggs. It's called Alerting Shrill. It does a whole bunch of party damage. So as the healer, I need to have a major cooldown or a combination of a rotational payoff plus a minor cooldown for every single Alerting Shrill. His third ability is called Gossamer Onslaught, and it's going to put webs on the ground that are circles that will end up killing anyone who gets hit by them. The best thing to do there is to stack and move as a group. If you're in a pug group and you're not in voice comms, you can kind of ping which way to do, and you should let the tank do that if possible, where he can ping and know where to go. But basically, the first thing he's going to do is Voracious Bite, then he's going to awaken the eggs, and I'm going to have a big AoE healing cooldown available for that, and I have that every time. The other thing about the Gossamer Onslaught is that we're not lusting, no, because we wouldn't generally have lust for this, so I'm not going to lust. Other thing is that during the big AoE, the Gossamer Onslaught, the circles on the ground that have to be dodged, there is still AoE damage going out. It's not as significant as the AoE damage during the Alerting Shrill, but it is something that you need to be prepared for as a healer, which means you need to have instant cast heals available in order to heal people off. As an evoker, I can just hover and then still cast healing spells. But other healers, shaman, you can use that for your. I'm bad with ability names that let you move while casting, but make sure you have instant cast in order to deal with that. So, anyways, on you, Suit, we're gonna go ahead and pull this boss, and we're gonna do the stack strat here, and we're just gonna make sure that we are not in the red circle of the boss whenever the ads are out. All right. And that's the biggest thing. Suit is pulling some crawlers into the boss, which is something you'll see. It gives our arcane mage funnel damage a little bit closer. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep some healing, and then I'm gonna release my stasis during the AoE. You can see very easy to heal everyone up. You can see the circle, even though they're here, they're not going into the circle. We're going to go ahead and stack for the Gossamer Onslaught. So then we can just move the stack again and do it over and over again. I forgot we had extra mobs. Well, thank you, Sue. And then gonna post a big heal there to heal them up. And it's really just rinse and repeat after this. You want to make sure that you leave as much space open as possible. And also, as a healer, obviously these mobs are hitting us, so they're going to be doing damage, just a little bit more damage. So we're going to stack up on the tank again, and we're going to get ready to move. Again, have to pop big healing cooldowns. We have the eggs here, so we can just do that and kill them again. That's pretty much it. Just rinse and repeat over and over. We're just going to kill the boss now. We have enough time that we can just kill the boss. If we didn't have the ability to kill the boss here, you could do it the real way, where you just go over there as DPS and kill them. Generally speaking, the timer that you want to do there for that boss on the should we kill the boss or kill the ads is if you can kill the boss before the Gossamer Onslaught, the AoE that we have to move from, that's a good time to go ahead and decide to focus the boss. So this next section, there's one pull before, and then there's kind of there's a decision point where there's multiple routes to go. One of them is going to be more AoE healing heavy, and one of them is going to be more interrupt and CC heavy. Which way you go is really just going to be which one you're more comfortable with. We are going to be going to the left here. However, there's some mages that cast a vault, some web bolts, and there's Bloodstained Assistants, which have an Extraction Strike, which is a big tank buster that our tank is going to need to be ready for here in this next pull here, pull 7. However, the big problematic mob is the Hulking Bloodguard. So he has two things that make him really important. The first is that he makes everyone around him take 50% less damage, so you generally do not want to be taking multiple Hulking Bloodguards at the same time. So that's kind of your limit on what you can pull. And second thing is he does a party-wide AoE that does a lot of damage. It does more damage this season than it did last season. So as the healer, I need to be ready for that AoE. So that combined with kicking the Bloodstained Web Mages, the most important one being Revolting Volley. The nice thing about all of these dungeons is Blizzard has similar naming conventions, and anything that says volley in it is absolute, has to be kicked, or it can wipe your group. As someone with a long cooldown, I'm going to focus that target, and I'm going to be ready for a Revolting Volley kick, although obviously it's not going to just be on me to interrupt those. So we're going to go ahead and pull 7 suit, just the Hulking Bloodguard. A similar problem where he has to run a long way. This is a good time for me to send an external on the tank, which I just did. So I'm going to see this Blood Mage, interrupt it so it can move in. That wasn't the priority interrupt, so probably not the best decision there from me, but we have other interrupts. And you see sometimes web bolts will go out during the AoE. That's why it's really important to keep people as topped off as possible. Also, if you see that going out, you can always press the defensive. If you see it going on, you don't have an interrupt. We have a Revolting Volley, got interrupted. Nice job there. Again, this is a difficult pull. As you can see, there's a ton of damage going out on people. Big thing here is make sure to keep people topped off, so if there's any casts that go off, it doesn't end up wiping the group immediately. We have a Stag Shell. The Stag Shell is a priority stun, so it needs to be focus fired. Burst it down, because once the alarm shell goes off, it'll summon a Hulking Bloodguard, which you don't want to deal with. Now, the other annoying thing about that Hulking Bloodguard that gets summoned is it doesn't actually count for percent. You can pull the Bloodguard. I just wanted to explain the Stag Shells, but we're good. So we have a Pat here, because it's a good time to pull it. I wanted to go ahead and have my tank pull it. As you can see, there's a ton of damage going out. We have another Web Mage, and we have a Bloodguard. Again, just do your best to heal through it. Obviously, ideally, there would be no cast going off, but, you know, we're not liquid, so there's going to be a mistake. So if you can keep people topped up, you can then cover the small mistakes of cast going off. Up to incredibly high key levels, by the way. Even on 18s, you're able to heal through cast going off. And so one thing to note with this section, like I said, it's a little bit interrupt heavy. There's also several pats that you need to be concerned about. One of the pats we pulled the Hulking Bloodguard.
I did not mean to pull that.
Okay, well, that's fine. So back up a little bit. So sometimes you have to wait. That's much better than wiping as a group. We don't want to take this pat and this pat and that stag shell. That's a lot of interrupts and it's a lot of CC that has to happen. So we can just pull this pat real quick because this pat does not go all the way over here. So we should be fine to pull this here. And then once we kill this web mage, we can go ahead and pull the next pat. The timer is very generous in Ara-Kara. There's only 3 bosses. It's a 30-minute timer. It's much better to wait a little bit for a pat that's difficult to deal with than to worry too much about the pulling as efficiently as possible. That's obviously going to change as you get up to much higher key levels, but kind of don't worry about that at the moment, you know? This next pack is just 2 stag shells and a single caster. Because this pull is so easy, but it has to be done, there's another group of, there's going to be a pat here that Suit's going to avoid, but there's going to be another group of ads he can pull in basically to give us something else to kill besides these stag shells that he's going to do whenever they're able. It's these blood workers over there. It's a good thing to add because the whole difficulty is so easy. Adding more damage doesn't really matter. So it's a good time to add other things in. So real quick, so after this, we're going to be doing a skip. So this is a very useful skip as it's a difficult mod that we're going to be pulling, but it's also an inefficient pat as far as percent. This skip can be done by a warlock. It can be done by any tank with a leap, such as a warrior or a demon hunter. And it can be done by an evoker. So what's going to happen is our tank is outlaw rogue as well. But generally you want a tank that's down there. So what's going to happen is someone's going to mount on a 3 mount. Then our tank and 1 other DPS are going to get in the sides. You are in there, right, Suit?
Oh no.
Yeah, and then one of the DPS is going to wait up here. I can then rescue them down. It's a little bit finicky sometimes, but I rescue them down. This boss, the first thing is that if you're doing this skip, all of the DPS and the healer, depending on how you do the skip, are going to be teleported down. So it's up to the tank to aim the frontal away from where they're being teleported down. They're going to be teleported down right here, basically. So you want to make sure the frontal is not being aimed at. Other than that, there's several abilities that he has. The first is the infestation, which you can see here, which are these swirly abilities. In addition to that, it's going to target someone with a infestation, which is going to put a dot on them, which does significant damage. If you're a DPS, it's a great time to be pressing a defensive, as you're going to be taking a ton of damage, and there's not really much boss damage outside, or not many damage outside of that. He's also going to do an impale, where he locks on to the furthest away target and then charges towards them. If you have a slow healer like a priest, that is a good time for someone who is a more mobile DPS to stand as far away as possible in order to bait the frontal. After he charges at them, he then does a large frontal that you have to move out of. Again, target at the same person. However, I'm an evoker healer, and I would like my DPS to just be maximizing their DPS. So I'm going to stand as far back as possible, let my DPS stand closer, then I will bait the frontal and then dodge it. In addition to that, he's going to spawn some ads, which need to be interrupted. They're going to be casting an ability called Silken Restraints. It's going to target a person. It just needs to get interrupted and they can be cleaved down with the boss. After the kind of like intermission phase that happens, he's going to spawn 2 ads as opposed to just 1 ad, although the spawn is staggered. He's going to then do this thing called Eye of the Swarm. There's going to be a giant circle that's going to spawn. We need to all stand in the circle. During that time, infestation as well as the tank frontal are still going to be happening. The tank wants to stand on the right side of that area to bait the frontal as it rotates to the left. So you can just stand on the right and it'll give the DPS and the healer more space to stand. And so that way the frontal is not going to be going through the circle that you're trying to dodge. Other than that, it's kind of a rinse and repeat fight. So for me, I'm going to be watching who's getting the infestation. And the infestation is an order. So the first person targeted was going to be the tank. Then after that, it's going to go in the same order every single time. So every single person is going to get infestation. So I can kind of know ahead of time who's going to get the infestation and do a little bit of prep so I can heal them as much as possible. This is a pull where we're going to be lust. This is where we would be lusting in a normal pull. We would be getting here much quicker, obviously, if I wasn't stopping to explain after all of the packs. But this is a good time to lust, as this boss is kind of bulky and has a lot of HP. So ready whenever you guys are. And you're going to see on the range now, just got teleported down right there. So I'm going to be as far away as possible. He's targeting me with this. Do that, use a movement ability, get away. Then he does the impale on me as well. This is the circle. That's the web mage that needs to be interrupted. Okay, I have an infestation. That's a good time for me to pop a defensive. You can see the debuff, and it does leave behind a circle afterwards, so you need to make sure you're moving out of it.
Run out.
And that is the whole fight. It's just rinse and repeat. We have more soak and restraints going out. Again, these just need to be interrupted and cleaved down. And then also taunted by the tank is a good thing so that they can move towards where the boss is and stacked and cleave down. Other than that, you'll notice there's not a ton of damage going out in this fight. It's just the person who gets targeted by the infestation. You see our tank is standing here on the right side. So the frontals are kind of like going into the green that we can't stand in.
Here's what happens if I don't do that.
Yep. But the boss is going to die.
So
Go for it.
if you are a pet class and you're going to be teleported down, make sure you dismiss your pets before you get teleported down. They do not cooperate with the teleport.
Last section, there are several ways to go. 2 of them are very similar, and one of them is down the middle. So one of the other changes that they did in this boss is they actually combined the Blood Overseers and the big guy in the middle. And so that pull, one is worth less %, but it is easier to do. He no longer does a stun on everyone. Since we skipped that pack, we kind of don't want to do another inefficient pull, so we're going to try to not do that. We're going to go down the left. Whenever you go down the left or the right, there's these overseers, there's drones, and there's the flying winged carriers that all need to be killed. The drones do actually a significant amount of damage to the tank. So it's something I need to look out for, and our tank needs to look out for. There's also a debuff that they put on the tank. It slows them and makes them take increased damage. And that is something I need to be dispelling as it's a magic debuff. So I'm going to be dispelling that basically on cooldown on our tank. So one, so that he can move out of the circles that the overseers cast. But secondly, because I want him to not die from taking the ticking damage. Other than that, the winged carriers, the flyers that you see, there's 2 packs of them. They actually just kind of charge someone and do AoE damage. So you kind of want to be in melee to allow us optimal uptime. There's things like Ursul's Vortex, which can stop their charge from druids. However, it's just kind of something that needs to be AoE down, and DPS it's a good time for you to press defenses for that. Binding shot as well, yes. So we actually have multiple ways to deal with the winged carrier's charge. So hopefully we'll get to see some of them. I'll stand out at the back so we can see them charge at me and hopefully get pulled back. You don't want to be pulling too many blood overseers together. The max is kind of 2, and that's when you need to pull. But it's really just try to pull as many drones as you can in with a single blood overseer, focus on the blood overseer, cleave down the drones, move on to the next one, and pull in the winged carriers as they're flying at you. And that's pretty much it. The blood overseers also need to be interrupted. Kind of standard thing. It can be handled by one melee interrupt though. So you can see that debuff stacking up on my tank, even immediately after I dispelled it. But it's still very much worth the GC for me to dispel here. Are we going down the middle suit?
Yes.
Okay. This is just a hulking bloodguard and 2 blood overseers. Last time he did a stun. These both have to be kicked. But this time he just does the AoE of last section. I might be dead. Yep. Battle rescue, please. So that was a play mistake by me. My apologies. I forgot to hover before casting Emerald Communion. Didn't hit his escape in time so that I could move, and then got hit by the circle. Whenever you pull this pack, there's the AoE that goes out, there's the circles that go out, and there's 2 interrupts that have to happen. Either the interrupts that doesn't go off, then you're going to have to... you're just going to die, basically, if that happens during the AoE. So this is why you don't go down the middle. And recommend going down the side. Just die, suit. Sorry. Yeah. So our mage just got one shot by the flyers, which does sometimes happen. That's what I'm talking about on those. But the AoE plus the flyers is not good. If you're going to go down the middle, I would make sure that you don't pull the flyers with the blood guards. But let's just go down the left, please. So if you get rooted by the black blood, any stun or interrupt will get out of it. As you saw there, I got rooted by a black blood. You can just send a stun to get out of it. And that this is still a double interrupt pull, and it's also not an easy pull. But provided you're coordinated on interrupts, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So if you don't have percent like we don't at the time, depending on your lust timer and your DPS cooldowns and your tank cooldowns, you can kind of pull more on the side, or you can pull the boss. We're actually going to pull the boss first because we have lust. So you also don't want any carriers up. As you can see, they are actually flying over the boss zone. So they're very important to take care of whenever you have the opportunity. So we're going to be pulling the boss now. I'm going to explain the boss real quick. So this boss is the Pug Killer. The thing that's very difficult about it is that it's a lot of avoidable damage. However, it did get changed in several ways to make it easier coming here into Season 3. The first is that the cultivated poison, the poison that goes on anyone that spawns adds, now only applies to 3 players opposed to applying to everyone. So we actually have 3 targeted poison dispels, so we can dispel every single one. That will drastically reduce the damage that's happening. But whenever you are dispelling, one of the things you want to make certain is that you're not going to immediately send your poison waves at someone else and then kill them. The other thing that happens here is the grasping blood, like you saw, we need to be spawning those grasping bloods. And the way that we do that is we need to be killing these small adds that come up. And by killing them just means you have to hit them with a single ability. So that's something that I'm going to be working on since I'm going to have the bandwidth to do that. But any kind of ranged DPS can make as many pools as possible. There's also some cool tricks you can do with Altered Time, as well as some other abilities to dodge the boss's pull-in whenever he does that. Our mage might demonstrate that Altered Time for you if he's comfortable with it. The thing is that he's going to do a pull-in, and when he does that pull-in, it actually does not do a one-shot AoE damage anymore. What it actually does, and this is something DPS should be considering, is it makes you do 75% less damage. So you'll be bad on the meter, and who wants to be bad on the meter? So DPS might actually care about that AoE this season. The other thing is it actually makes you take 75% more damage, which makes the poisons deadly as well. The other thing he does the circles that go on the ground, which can end up killing people, which is like what I died to previously, so those need to get moved out of. Whenever you're rooted, you need to be using an interrupt or a stun in order to get yourself out of the root after the AoE. Everyone should be able to handle themselves. Even priests, they have to save their fear for it, but everyone can handle themselves to get out of that stun. There's no other interrupts that need to happen during the fight, so it's kind of not a problem. Save your interrupt to get yourself out of the CC. Other than that, it's just a positioning fight, and it is kind of a long fight. So you should have lust up by this time, even if you lusted the second boss, or it'll come up in the middle of the fight. So that's a good time to go ahead and do that. Yeah, thanks, Haskell. Disengage does get you out of the root. So go ahead and pull whenever you're ready, and we will lust on pull. And so as an evoker, it's a little bit difficult this fight. This is one of the times where my short range is problematic. But here I'm going to be killing blood workers with my instant cast abilities to create the pulls. We have the poisons coming out right now. One's on me. I'm going to move before dispelling it to make sure I'm not killing my mage there. And so these pools, after they fade, are what spawns the grasping bloods that have to be cleaved down. Here's the AoE. Make another pool. Go over one of these pools and root myself. So here I can interrupt that and get out of that. Our tank is taking more damage. I kind of stole his pool. We were going for the same pool. You kind of want to make sure that doesn't happen. Again, just making more pools when I have the chance. Go ahead and dispel myself, making sure I'm not going on with the circles first. That's pretty much it. Our monk, as you saw, did not get the debuff because he transcendenced out. There's a lot of tricks you can do to get out of the AoE if you time it right. Again, this is one of those times where the affix can be annoying. You just have to there's not like any real tip to handle it better. Just try to move and help out your friends and neighbors as much as possible. The reason to do things like alter timeout and to transcendence out, DKs can also disadvance to just ignore the mechanic, is that it allows there to be less pool that people are fighting for. You don't have multiple people grabbing the same pool and then possibly dying because of that. But really it's just a rinse and repeat boss. I think it is kind of the pug killer, and it's something that people are very scared about, but it does kind of just get simple after that. And so one of the reasons to pull trash like this after a boss is that you only have to kill the percent that you need. That's the advantage of pulling the boss if you need it. Congrats on the sack brood. War about sack brood drop. This has been like a nugget. Sorry for that couple wipes that we had there. That's a good reason to not go down the middle. Again, it's fine to go down there if you're very ready for it. However, I would still just recommend going on the side. It's much easier. Where do you think the biggest mistakes are from this dungeon or just like in general? Most common. So the most common mistakes. So the first pull, the lust pull that we did. I think if you're not very ready for that, you notice like people are getting very low. I don't have like my details. Is not going to show my HPS there, but my HPS is really high. There's a lot of poisons that have to happen. There's a lot of interrupts that have to go off. If you miss a priority interrupt, it's basically a wipe. I think there's people pulling too big there. If you're not confident, you're not with a high quality group, I would just stop at the bottom of the stairs, pull that, and then go up to the first mini boss. The second one is just like the healing checks. The first boss is AoE, is a significant healing check. If people aren't pressing defensives or your healer isn't very ready for them, that can be problematic. Like any dungeon, cast going off is always going to be a problem. So I try to recommend people stay as high a health as possible, not stunning the sentries. And it's usually not people not stunning the sentries that spawn the big blood guards. It's more of everyone stunning the sentries that do the blood guards. So if you have time in chat to say, I'll stun first, like just type it out. That's super helpful because generally only needs like 2, maybe 3 stuns in order to kill the sentries that are casting that shrill that spawns the blood guards. But oftentimes I'll see just people panic, everyone will send their stun, then you won't have a stun for the next one. Other than that, this last boss is a big pug killer. Like I said, big thing is just like, look, the damage check is not hard, the healing check is not hard, it's just a mechanics thing. So making sure that you do the mechanics, not worrying as much about doing the maximum DPS is really important there. And like Kudo said, the sentries that spawn the blood guard, if you let that happen, the blood guards will stay there, which is very unfortunate because then you have to kill those blood guards, which again don't give percent. Other than that, I think the second boss is usually not a problem. If your tank doesn't tank it on the right side, that can be problematic. But most tanks, even pug tanks at this point, will know to tank it on the right side, and you don't generally have issues there. Sometimes someone will tank a frontal and die, but you'll have a battle res available. But yeah, I think Ara-Kara is generally considered it was one of the easier dungeons in season 1, and I think it's remaining one of the easier dungeons in season 3. Again, focus on not being super greedy with pulls if you're not confident. Focus on interrupts. Focus fire down the right mobs, and make sure for the last boss that you're doing the mechanics over DPS.